welcome back to my channel. What are we doing today? Today we are looking at these. Ooh. Now these are actually DIY pastel watercolors. DIY means do it yourself, so I made these pastel watercolors myself. And how I did it was an experiment one day with gouache and some watercolor inks that I have, and I wanted to see if it was gonna make it into pastel colors because I really wanted to experiment with pastel watercolors. I didn't want to do like pastel things as I go along. I wanted a set of watercolors with pastel tints, and I used the same Crayola, empty Crayola case that I had that I showed you in a previous video, I believe. So I was able to do those, and I have my very own set of pastel watercolors. So today I'm gonna try them out. I've not tried them out yet since I have put them to dried. So after mixing the watercolor inks with white gouache, I put them to dry, and these are how they're now dried. So today I'm going to swatch them out in this book. I'm going to do some exercise with it, and then I am going to do this illustration. I'm also going to swatch them out on my card here that I have, so I could have it as my reference when using this. Okay, so as usual, what we're going to do some swatching with these paints, and then we're going to take it away. I'm going to do some work with it, and then I'm going to come back to you in the same video to give you my full thoughts and perspective of what I think of my DIY pastel watercolor palette. So first I'm going to swatch. I think for the best result, I'm going to swatch it in this book. Now this is the unfortunate book. I call it now my unfortunate book because the cover is lifted, and this book is actually made with Cezanne cotton rag, 100% cotton rag paper. These are their rough press paper. So because it's cotton ragged and it's rough press, it should give me the best result for these pastel tints watercolors that I made. Because this paper is actually Canson Imagine, and this is a mixed media paper. So it's, even though yes, mixed media is good for watercolor, it is best when you do 100% cotton when it comes to watercolors. So we want to give it its best shot, so we're gonna do the cotton rag, and then for swatching, it's because it's just for color reference, we can use the mixed media paper. So now that you know what I'm doing, let me quit my blabbering and get into my swatching. Okay, you first see me here starting by re-wetting my paints. These paints were actually very thirsty. I had to go back several times and re-wet them. I also should remind you guys that this exercise, this exact same exercise that I'm doing right here, is actually up on my Patreon for my Patreons if they want to follow along with me, as well as the coloring page. Yes, you guys got the coloring page as well. I found a way to put it up, so you guys are going to start getting coloring pages out of this book as well. And I was actually surprised by the colors. I was also caught off guard a little bit by the opacity of the colors, how opaque they were, because I didn't expect the gouache that I used to be that opaque, but gosh, it was. So I was really caught off guard by that, and I actually enjoyed the fact that I made a gray and a brown pastel tint, because you know I like to use browns a lot, especially for skin tone. OMG, I was loving that minty color, and actually the watercolor ink I made it from was mint, so I was just in love with that. I actually also like the blue that came out of it, because I really like how the blue shade, it seemed perfect for me. I couldn't imagine that, you know, after so much work, you know, of doing so much work, because mixing this gouache and these watercolor inks was a lot of work, and yeah, I was amazed by the amount how beautiful it came out. The one part of it that caught me a little like a downer was the fact that I mixed two pinks. You know, I mixed a warm tone and a cool tone pinks, and I was like, shoot, I should have mixed one of these pinks into a purple. so I could have a purple, but it's okay. I comfort myself saying that I have a blue and I have a warm tone and a cool tone pink, so I could always mix a warm tone and a cool tone purple. The orange in this set is not actually from the watercolor inks that I have. I actually mixed, they had another color, vermilion, but I didn't want three reds. So what I did was I mixed the yellow into that, and so I was able to get an orange. And finally, this color was too light for me. I hope it dries a little bit better, but it was too light for me. Guys, this was a lot of fun, and I will see you in the end piece. Welcome back, friends, to part 2 of this perspective video to my DIY handmade, well, DIY pastel watercolor paints that I made with watercolor inks and gouache. I worked with this some. I did work with this. As you can see, there's good divots in these, especially the blue. I think I've already reached pan on blue and on black amazingly. These were the two colors that I used a lot in one of the coloring pieces that I did. You have seen me swatch this out on this. I did do some lifting, some layering, I did do color mixing, and then I did this little illustrative piece. If you are a member of my Patreon, you will get this exercise as well as the coloring illustration on as a part of your Patreon reward for April, so you can color along with me if you so chooses. And let's now talk about these paints here. You notice I did swatch them out. Let me reduce one of the glare for you. And oh shoot, yeah, and I did swatch them out. So now let's talk a little bit more about these paints. So if you notice, I did swatch them out on the swatch card. They are very opaque because they were made with white gouache, but they are very beautiful colors if you noticed. For this here, for me to be able to get contrast in, I used it in conjunction with the Crayola washable watercolor paint. Not because it's the best, but because that was the paint I was working with previously. So that was the paint I had out. So I didn't want to re-wet a different set of paint since I already had some paints drying and out. So I just used the Crayola to give myself a bit of contrast in. The piece that I did here was actually on hot press paper. This is the Fluid 100 hot press paper. This is actually the last page. I think after this the pad is finished. So this is the Fluid 100 hot press. This is a cellulose paper. So this is how the paint came out. It came out beautifully. I mean, it was made with gouache. So, and I used it like gouache. I remember that it's not a watercolor set, it is a gouache set. So I used it more like gouache than like watercolor. And this was the result I achieved. This is actually a mixed media piece because as well as working it with the Crayola washable watercolor paints, I actually also used colored pencils. The Color Pastel color pencils, actually to be precise, was the color pencils that I used in this. And I love how it came out. It came out so beautifully. Some of the things I was having issue with these paints here to my side, let me see if I could put you in the frame, with these paints here to my side was that contrasting. I was having issues with contrasting, also color variety. You notice there's 5 different greens here. That's because I also mixed it with the Crayola washable paints in order for me to get that level of variety that I wanted with the green colors. I also think I mixed it with the black, because the black here, this color here, doesn't give me a dark enough tone, and even when you layer it on top of each other, because it can layer, it still doesn't give me that darkness, that contrast that I want. So I had to use the Crayola black in order to give myself that contrasting for the little wolf here. And I used mixtures of Crayola yellow and blue and mixtures of Crayola greens in order for me to get the variety of greens that I have here in this piece. And of course, I used some of the Color Pastel, or the Color Macaroon. Actually, the name is Macaroon. The Color Macaroon color pencils for me to, again, get some variety, see how it works with mixed media pieces. It works well because it's made with gouache, and and the color was able to go on top of it without scratching any of the paint off. The lid is very smooth, so that was very good for me. And I also had to, because I was also struggling with the opacity of this, when I don't think I have any examples here of it, but it's very opaque. If you notice here, it covers your line work. So for this, I had to reline it, and I did with this. If you're a member of my Patreon, you would have seen this, and this is what I used. So I've been working a lot to reline this, and I'm working a lot with rigger brushes. So in order to get my line work back. So now that you've seen what I've done with it and heard most of my thoughts, I probably will repeat this again in the color piece. Let me stop this because this is going a little too long for us. And now let's get to this color, this illustration here of this jacket. And let's get to it. Okay, we already hit most of the points in the intro to the second part, but some of the other things that I noticed with this paint, especially on this paper, these paints actually dries darker than when they're initially laid down. You can actually see the difference there. I think it will be illustrated more the farther towards the right that I come. You will see how darker the left is to the right, even though it is the same paint when using this pastel paint color. The other thing is, on this paper it looks so amazing, so beautiful, but on the hot press paper it kind of looked gritty to me. I don't know, it really has this gritty effect to me on the hot press paper, even though it is very smooth. Like, the color laid down is not as even as it is on the rough press paper. I am actually using the minty color here, and I was actually surprised of how amazing and fun, how much fun I was having with this painting session. I mixed the blue and one of the pinks together to get that amazing purple, because, you know, I didn't want to put just pink because it would be pink on pink for the background. So I kind of broke that up with a blue mixed with purple, and then I went in there with just the blue on its own. Like I said, I was actually amazed of how beautiful it went down, how beautiful the color looks on this. And then in here I went with the gray, or the black mixed with white, the gray, and this was okay. It was like, really, here when I was working here I made a boo-boo, a big one, and I was like, oh gosh. So yeah, you see me dapping it there a bit, and it was like, really, you know, I had to change the brush because this brush was basically too big for me to use. So I changed it into a smaller one, and I was able to have a better control with the smaller brush, as you can see. And going in there, I think after here you'll see me do the line work. And even the line work, I actually begin from left to right and from upper left going towards the right, because I'm left-handed. So I know that if I go from left to right as I go along, I will not smudge previous line work. So I actually went from left to right intentionally with this. And realigning this, even though it was a lot of work, it was also a lot of fun. I was having so much fun doing this. Guys, thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I will wrap this up here and then let you continue watching me doing some line work, and I'll see you in the end piece. Here we are done. If you were able to follow along with me and get your own copy of this exercise and the line work to this on my Patreon, let me know how it turned out for you. I think I did link my Instagram there as well as the hashtag there. And this was so amazing. This was so beautiful. These paints are really lovely. They are. As you can see, I think I've now reached pan on the yellow as well as the black and the blue. So I am really getting use out of these, and I think also the orange to some extent. So I am getting use out of these, and it's not just a one and done. I am combining my mediums together. I'm actually thinking of hitting this with some colored pencils. When the line art is completely dry, I can still see a couple wet bits here and there. But I did enjoy my DIY pastel watercolor paints. I did not tell you what two paints I added together. I just usually say it's a gouache and a watercolor ink. I think I would describe that in the description below. Because the brand of the gouache is not important to me, or the watercolor ink. It's just the fact that I was able to experiment with the mediums that I have. That's the most important part. And there was something I should have added. I did score these on my tool here. So I will give you guys a score of how I rate these paints after all things considered, because while I was working with it, I scored it. And I also work with these paints. I should also note that I work with these paints with a softer brushes. This is the Princeton Neptune that I have here, which is a synthetic brush still, but it's a softer synthetic brush, and it was able to pick up a lot of paint. However, I had to saturate the paints well with water, because these paints tend to be a bit stiff. Yeah, they're really stiff, and I need to saturate them well with water so I could able to get paint from them, because somehow, I think I discussed it in the intro, that it tends to absorb a lot of water, so it doesn't really, you can't use just a wet brush. You really do have to saturate the paint wells with water for you to pick up enough paint. But all in all, it was a lot of fun. I love learning about this. I actually enjoy my very own DIY pastel watercolor paints that I made. I was thinking of getting a brand pastel watercolor, but I said, you know what, I think I could make it. And I actually enjoyed it, using stuff that I have within my own studio. Let me know what your thoughts on this in the comments below. If you are a member of my Patreon and you're able to download my worksheet as well as my line art, put it up on Instagram. Let me see how you interpret this. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this journey, and as always, stay safe, stay blessed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.